As the NFL regular season starts to wind down, you really get to where there are three major points of interest, maybe four, when it comes to the next phase of the NFL season. People start to get excited about what's to come with the playoffs. People start to look ahead to free agency and the NFL draft. And then we also look at what's going to happen with the NFL head coaching carousel. Every year, you know that people are going to get fired as head coaches. You know that people are going to get their first opportunities or another opportunity as an NFL head coach. So I decided I would just come on here and give my thoughts on some of the coaches that I think are potentially on the hot seat now, and some of the coaches that are probably going to end up with new jobs or with no jobs after this 2015 NFL season. I'll start with the interim coaches, Dan Campbell in Miami and Mike Mularkey in Tennessee. Really, when I look at Campbell, I thought there was an opportunity there that he could help save their season, that maybe he would be the right voice in that Miami Dolphins locker room. And while I don't think coaching alone is the problem, I just don't think we've seen enough out of the Dolphins since Dan Campbell has taken over to justify making him the long-term answer as head coach. I just don't think he's quite ready for prime time yet. I don't think the team has responded to him the way that they needed to respond to him in order for him to get that interim label taken off and be made the permanent head coach. I'd be surprised if he ended up back with the team as a head coach in 2016. I think they'll look for somebody else and probably give Campbell his walking papers. In terms of Mularkey in Tennessee, I don't see where he's going to be the best option, because at the end of the day, you need to find a coach that is going to be able to work with Marcus Mariota. You need to be able to find the right infrastructure to be able to structure the game plan appropriately around Marcus Mariota. It's bad enough he brought him into a situation with Wisenhunt, who was going to try and do Wisenhunt things instead of trying to do the best things for his young quarterback in Mariota. And now you've got Mularkey, who also seems to not be able to figure out that, hey, Marcus Mariota can run. Let's do some different things with him from an athletic standpoint that can put him in the best possible situations to succeed. It's really not that hard to figure out, but it seems like for some of these older school NFL head coaches, it clearly is, and that's a problem. So I'd expect Mularkey to be gone as well. The Titans are playing decently on the defensive side of the ball, and Mariota has made some strides, but are you really going to want to risk Mularkey running the show? This is the same guy that got fired after 1 year in Jacksonville. I'm just saying. So both of those interim guys, I'd be stunned if they were back in 2016. They're both going to be goners. Now, in terms of some guys that I think the seat is warm or warming up on them, I'll start with Jim Tomsula in San Francisco. That front office is a complete freaking mess. And I'm not going to sit there and say that Tomsula has done a bad job, because I don't think he's done a bad job. What coach in that situation would really be doing a good job? There's all types of chaos in the front office. You had all types of departures in retirement and free agency. Your quarterback in Colin Kaepernick ended up flaming out. I mean, for God's sakes, they're starting Blaine Gabbert. And they're actually playing better football with Blaine Gabbert as their starting quarterback than Colin Kaepernick. That's how bad Colin had gotten. And I think that speaks to the fact that Tomsula hasn't lost this team, that these players are playing hard for him. I think the seat is warm in large part because of the fact that a lot of people probably view him as a bit of a joke candidate put in place as a bit of a puppet by a front office that's in mess and in chaos, and he could end up being the fall guy when he shouldn't be. My hope is that for Tomsula's sake, that he actually gets a real legitimate chance, that this organization gives him some time, because I think he has deserved the opportunity to keep coaching this team, because the team, while they have not been good, they're most certainly not the worst in the league, and they've actually started to play a little bit better as we've gotten into the second half of the season. I just wonder if he's going to fall victim to a front office in chaos. I look at Mike McCoy of the San Diego Chargers. I don't know that he's in risk of losing his job, but at the same point in time, things really haven't been good in San Diego this year. This is a team that is in contention to end up with the number one overall pick, and anytime you have a situation like that where your team ends up with the number one overall pick, more often than not, that coach ends up getting fired. When I look at McCoy, he seems to work well with Phillip Rivers, but this is a team that is heading in the wrong direction. Do you really want to continue down that path with Mike McCoy? Granted, you're only 3 years in, and you've seen some good, but you've also seen some not so good. And what that organization has to determine is 2015 a blip on the radar, an aberration, Or is this a sign of even worse things to come? And do you want to have McCoy potentially leading your team long term when you're looking at maybe moving to Los Angeles into a new market? I don't know. And I look at Gus Bradley of the Jaguars. The Jaguars have made some small strides, especially on the offensive side of the ball this year. But this is year 3 for Bradley. The Jaguars still aren't a very good team. They still haven't made that big of a stride on the defensive side of the ball that people have been expecting, that people have been waiting for them to make. They're just not a good football team. And at some point in time, when you look at Gus Bradley, is he really the coach that's going to get you to being a playoff contender? Is he the guy that's going to get you there? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I think that general manager David Caldwell has bought into him. I think the owner, Khan, is also bought into what the Jaguars organization is doing. So Bradley's job is probably safe, but I do think his seat is going to at least start to warm up. In terms of some guys where the seat is hot, I think you've got to start with Jim Caldwell and the Detroit Lions. Now, I don't think it's entirely fair, especially, again, when we're talking about a coach only in year 2. I don't like seeing head coaches fired so quickly unless it just goes so terribly bad that it's clear to everyone involved that the guy needs to go. But you look at Caldwell, the Lions did start off 1-7, although, frankly, what else were you going to expect? This was not a team that was in a position to repeat last year's performance, in my opinion, heading into this year. A lot of the seat being hot could be based off of the fact that the owner, Mrs. Ford, has fired basically everybody that's not Jim Caldwell. And as a result, they're probably waiting for her to drop the boom on him. Although you would think if she was going to drop the boom on him with everybody else that she fired, she probably would have done so already. Although, who knows, looking at who the hell the Lions hired as their team president, God only knows what the hell that old lady is thinking, frankly. Now, to be fair to Jim Caldwell, the Lions have played much better football recently. They've strung together a few wins, and frankly, if they didn't find a way to Lions themselves, they got caught with the lion eyes, if you will. They should have beaten the Packers on Thursday night. They should be sitting at 5-7 with an outside chance of sneaking into the wild card on the NFC side. This is a Lions team that has responded better in the second half of the year under Jim Caldwell. I think the seat is hot. If they play well the rest of the year and maybe win another game or two, it's probably enough to help Caldwell keep his job for another year. But if they lose out and they keep doing the same old Lions things, then Caldwell's probably got to go. I look at Sean Payton for the New Orleans Saints. I think his seat is hot, but I think it's kind of mutually hot in the sense that Payton is probably going to be gone after this year. I'd be stunned if he was back in New Orleans. I think either A, the ownership there will be ready to move on and realize that they have to start preparing for life after Drew Brees at some point, which is also going to mean it's time to move on from Sean Payton. There's been several years of bad defense, and even when you look at the team, you can sit there and blame a defensive coordinator like Rob Ryan, but, Sean Payton's the head guy, too. At some point in time, there's got to be some culpability and responsibility there. You got to look at the general manager, Mickey Loomis, as well. I think there should be a potential for some major front office and coaching staff shakeup in New Orleans. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Payton is gone from New Orleans in 2015, after 2015, only because he's got himself another job come 2016. I think the guy that more people should be talking about having a hot seat, and it should be really hot, frankly, is Jeff Fisher of the St. Louis Rams. I know a lot of people like to extol the virtues of Jeff Fisher, and I go back to some of his years at Tennessee, and I gave him a lot of respect and a lot of credit because I thought a lot of times he got his teams to play way above themselves. He found a way more often than not to get his teams into the mix. But we look at his experience here in St. Louis. This is year number 4. They're sitting at 4-7. Yes, they're undefeated in the NFC West, and that's all fine and good. But 4-7. They have a very slim chance of making the playoffs. So they still have to play Seattle and Arizona again. They're 4-7. Their defense, that is supposed to be a whole lot better, just isn't. Their offense is not very good, even with Todd Gurley. They have no explosiveness in the passing game. They still have the same questions at quarterback that they had back in 2012 when Jeff Fisher came into the fold and Sam Bradford was the fucking guy. At some point in time, while everybody wanted to talk about how the Rams trolled the Redskins when they played each other and the Rams sent out the 6 players that they got from the picks in the RG3 deal, well, the simple fact of the matter is that the Redskins have actually made the playoffs since that RG3 deal was consummated. Granted, that was with RG3 as the quarterback in 2012, but they've at least made the playoffs. The Rams under Jeff Fisher have failed to do so and are going to fail to do so again this year. And it will look even more ridiculous if the Washington Redskins, granted in the NFC least, find a way at 7-9 or 8-8 to end up winning that division and making the playoffs themselves with a different quarterback this time in noodle arm Kirk Cousins. That would have been twice in 4 years that the Washington Redskins made the playoffs, and that's 0 times in 4 years that the St. Louis Rams would have made the playoffs. And with the potential for this team looking to move to LA, this team still not having their answer long-term at quarterback, the seat should be warmer on Jeff Fisher. It should be hot. It should be burning hot. And frankly, if his team doesn't make the playoffs this year, that's 0 for 4. He should be fired. And I don't really see a good defense for him sticking around after this year. But I see 2 coaches that ultimately have their pants screaming on fire, and I would be absolutely flummoxed and stunned if they were back with their current teams come 2016. I go to the easy one first, and that's Mike Pettin of the Cleveland Browns. What does he do? He's a defensive-minded guy, and his defenses stink. He's been part of the problem when it comes to Johnny Manziel. It's like he's been trying to intentionally sabotage him from day number 1. Mike Pettin is stupid. Their general manager, Ray Farmer, is stupid. Their owner, Jimmy Haslam, is stupid because the Cleveland Browns are stupid. So now that Mike Pettin has been there, and this is the end of year number 2, the Cleveland Browns will do what the Cleveland Browns will do. It's been 2 years. Good luck. Nice to see you. Get the fuck out. And they'll go on and hire somebody else. This is what they do. And based off of the performance of the Browns team, and at one point in time we were talking about having a chance to make the playoffs last year when they started off 7-5. You look at them now, they're in the mix, very strongly in the mix for the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, Pettin's a goner, and he fucking should be. What a bum. But the biggest bum of all, and the guy who should have his pants the most screaming on fire to the point where you almost look at it as self-inflicted arson, has to be Chip Kelly of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles just had to give him front office control. And now Chip Kelly, the general manager, has killed Chip Kelly, the coach. And it's just that simple. And if you're an Eagles organization, you have to look at the damage that was inflicted by this moron running the front office for even one off season and say, do you want him touching anything involving this organization anymore? In a bad division, the Philadelphia Eagles are sitting at 4-7. And they're heading a wrong way fast. Their defense has been bad the past few weeks. Their offense has been mediocre to bad pretty much all year long. I mean, seriously, if for no other reason than this, Chip Kelly traded for Sam Bradford because he thought Sam Bradford would be a good fit for his offense. That calls into question the simple football intelligence of both Chip Kelly, the general manager, and even more importantly, Chip Kelly, the head football coach, who in the bluest of blue fucks thinks that Sam Bradford is A, going to be a good fit for your offense, and B, be a guy that can get you to the playoffs as a starting quarterback. Who the fuck thinks this? Apparently Chip Kelly does. You pay number 1 corner money to Byron Maxwell, who's a mediocre to average number 2 corner in the NFL. You sit there and freaking trade away LaShawn McCoy for a middle linebacker in Kiko Alonso with multiple previous torn ACLs, and how's that worked out for you? All the while, the money you didn't spend on Shady McCoy, you spent even more money on DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews, and how's that worked out for you? You bring in a big money running back like DeMarco Murray in a time and place in the NFL where you maybe really didn't need to, where Matthews actually fits your system better, and you didn't do enough to make sure that DeMarco Murray was put into a situation that suited his skill set and his strengths. And all the while, you invested even more money in 2015 because it was a fucking charity cause for Sam fucking Bradford. Yeah, if anybody's pants need to be on fire, it has to be Chip Kelly. I'd be stunned if he's back with the Philadelphia Eagles. He'll probably find himself a new coaching gig in the college ranks, or he might end up with somewhere like the Tennessee Titans, even if that requires the Eagles to trade for him. At this point in time, Chip Kelly has been such a disaster being in charge of all the football aspects of the Philadelphia Eagles that when it comes to the Eagles trading Chip Kelly to another team, they should give up a 5th or 6th round pick along with Chip Kelly and just say, no, here, take him. We don't even want anything in return. We're just happy to get rid of this turd. So that's what I think. Chip Kelly's got to be a goner. Pettin's got to be a goner. Frankly, once the Rams don't make the playoffs, which they won't, I think Jeff Fisher should be a goner. Sean Payton's probably a goner. Jim Caldwell may or may not be a goner based off of the whims of a 90-plus-year-old woman. And there were other interim coaches are goners, and some of these other guys, their seats are warming up, but I don't think they're there just yet in terms of potentially losing their jobs after this season.